Alrighty, welcome back, boys and girls. It's your main math man, Mr. Shank, coming to you live from Walker Grant Middle School. And in this video, I just want to go through some of the questions that were on the functions quiz, so that way you can use it to be able to study and to be able to better understand how this works. So for the first one, it says, which of the following is a function? So a couple ways that you can figure this out is the vertical line test, meaning at any point on the graph, it should only hit once, meaning if I draw a straight line, it should only hit the line of our function once. So that's one of the ways. Or you could also do, if you have, let's say, a set of points, we could say there's no repeated x values. That way we know for sure that it would be a function. All right. For this one, it's a lot simpler if we just use the vertical line test. Since we have no exact points, we just have different graphs. And so if you see, let's use, what's the highlighter look like? Yeah, sure. If you use the highlighter, or if you use the straight edge tool, or if you just use your common sense, you'd be able to see, hey, okay, I should be able to draw a straight line at any point on the graph, and it should only hit once. And as you can see, it hits twice on this circle. It hits all the times on this line, and it hits multiple times on this graph, which makes our answer A. For the next one, it says which order pair is not a function, and so we are looking for, again, we are looking for repeated, that's actually, so we'll write this a little bit better. Since we're saying not a function, we want to say it's not a function, so we are going to have repeated x values. All right, so again, I can just easily highlight or circle, underline, whatever you'd like to do, those x values for yourself. Again, in an order pair, you must have an x and you must have a y, just like a pair of socks. Otherwise, I'm going to make fun of you because you only have a pair of socks on, or one sock, I should say. So let's highlight. I'm going to highlight the x values. So let's highlight 2, 4, -2, 1. Let's highlight 2, 3, 4, 5. So far, these are functions because, again, those highlighted values, there's no repeated functions, or excuse me, there's no repeated x values. However, in letter C, you can say, hey, right there, I actually have two sets of repeated values. So I would know that my answer is going to be C, but might as well just double check the other ones. I can say 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can count, and I can say that is also a function. So again, you can use the eliminator tool to be able to eliminate the non-answers. All right, so this is the one that got the most questions, and personally I thought it was one of the easier ones, but I can understand why people get caught up on it, mainly because it has two sentences, and I guess people that take Math 8 can't read more than two sentences. And so it says each set, or actually let's read directions, click and drag each answer to the correct box. So we're gonna be able to drag and drop. So this is one of the TEI ones, meaning if you make one mistake, it's completely wrong, just like real life. So each set given includes members of the domain in range Shank's domain, shown in each graph. Match each set with the correct graph. All right, excuse me. So what we're going to do, let's do this first one here. I'm gonna do this graph first. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, okay, what values are included in the domain? So let's highlight the domain. So it's gonna be any of these x values. And you can see, okay, what x values, as if you're working on paper, you can kind of drag your finger from left to right. You're only looking at the x values. So what x values are included? Well, for instance, I know that my lowest x value is going to be 0. I know that my lowest x value is going to be 0. And I know that my highest or furthest x value is going to be 3. Again, the way this is working is you're looking, okay, I am bounded or I'm fenced off. I cannot pass going left. I can't go any further than x equals 0. Again, our graph doesn't go any further. And the same thing goes with to the right. Again, I can't go further than 3. So again, we're looking for something that would include 0 as the lower bound. Let's not draw that. Let's try that again. I'm going to have 0. There we go. And we're also going to have 3 as the upper amount, meaning we can't go past 3. So which of these sets, again, meaning they have the brackets like that, which of those sets does not go lower than 0? Well, if you look, all of these have negative numbers, meaning this has a negative, this has a negative, this, and that. These all have negatives. So right away, I just have to look for the one that only has 0 and 3, and so I'm left with that. So I'm left with the domain of 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So let's do range. So for range, I'm going to look at, very similarly, the y values. And so if you're working on paper, again, you could maybe turn it sideways so it's a little bit easier to see, whatever way works. And so if we're looking at our y values, again, we're tracing up and down, and we're looking at our maximum y value and our lowest y value. And so, okay, let's see, what is going to be my top? Well, I'm going to say that, hey, I know that at the very max, I cannot go past y equals 5, and I cannot go below y equals -4. So I know I have to include for the range, I have to include, oh man, those curly brackets are tough, especially when you're not using a pencil. Let's try that one. Sure, close enough. All right, so we can't go past -4, and we cannot go past 5. So what set includes -4 and 5? So let's try to see. Okay, I have -4. Does this have 5? No. I can't actually even eliminate it. That's fine though. Does this have -4? This doesn't even have -4. This actually goes past -5, so it can't be that. This goes past, this goes past -4. This goes past +5. So we know that the only one remaining would be this. Again, this is just a process of elimination. You want to be able to say, okay, I'm using the things that I do know to eliminate, or X the eliminator, I can eliminate some of these answers. Okay. Again, once you get a couple of these down, it becomes a lot easier since there are less answers. All right, so for the second one, now let's see, let's start with our domain. Always start with x values. And so let's see, we go from -1, and we are capped at, or we can't go past 2. So my range, geez, a little bit off today, my domain, still my domain. That's why we highlight, so that way we know what we're talking about. My domain, I cannot go past -1, and I cannot go past +2. All right, so which of these has those values? Again, looking carefully, I can see that, hey, this has those 4 values that I need. All right, so get rid of some of this, and then we can do the range for this one. So let's do the range. So now we're looking at the y values, and so now we're going to be capped at +6, and we can't go below -3. So which of these has -3 and +6? Well, we can see very clearly is that one. Again, this becomes super simple once you get the hang of it. A lot of people just said, I don't know how to do this, and they just freeze and stop. Again, if you do that, if driving a car, people are going to run into you, and it's not going to end well. Again, always be able to at least try something out, say, hey, does this work out? All right, last but not least, let's do the domain for this one. And so we have, we're going to include -4, and we're going to include +2. And so the only one that is there is this set of values. And so last but not least, again, process of elimination, meaning I have to use each and every one of these. We are good. Again, make sure if you need to replay, pause, slow-mo, fast forward, whatever, please do as such. Also make sure you're using that full screen, closed captioned, right-click save as, all that good stuff. All right, moving forward. All right, this is probably one of the easiest ones, but a lot of people messed up because they didn't study, or they didn't practice, or they didn't do anything the entire year. And so as your x values, so as x increases, what is happening to y? As x increases, what is happening to y? Y is going to be doing what? So for that first one, again, if you're able to remember these very simply, it becomes just like that, very simple. And so if your x is going, or if your x is increasing, meaning it's going from largest, or excuse me, it's going from least to greatest. It's going from least to greatest. And your y values are going from big to small, meaning it's falling to the bottom right. That means that it's going to be decreasing. And so that means that our slope is going to need to be negative. If it's a straight horizontal line, like you see here, if it is a straight horizontal line, our slope is going to be 0. Our slope is going to be 0. And lastly, if your x increases as your y also increases, you know that for sure that is going to be a positive slope. And again, I can demonstrate this several different ways. You can try out a function and see, hey, does this slope work out? Alrighty, so now for this one. So it says, what is the slope and y-intercept of this graph? So you want to be able to find out, okay, what is, so our slope, as always, is m, and our y-intercept is b. And that's using that wonderful equation that we have been using, well, at least the ones I've been studying have been using, our y equals mx plus b. Again, if you're able to find those values, it's very simple to just plug in and you get your equation. For this, you just have to be able to identify it. So usually what we do first is we look for that y-intercept, usually because that's the easiest one to identify, meaning, okay, if we highlight our y-axis, at what point does our graph of our line hit the y-axis? And so you can kind of see, hey, right away, it's right in there. And so I can count up, because it's always the point 0, b, where our x value is 0 and our y value is b. And so if we count, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the y-intercept is going to be the point 0, 4. And so we know that b is going to be equal to 4 for this one. So let's see, is there any of these that has a y-intercept that is not 4? Well, yep, right away we can eliminate that first answer because we know, hey, it has to be a positive 4. Okay, so now let's say, let me get rid of this. Let's say, okay, how do I find that slope? So let's find that slope real quick. So again, as always, our slope is going to be that change in y, divided by that change in x. Change in x. Kind of draw that x, let's see. Something like that. Okay. So how many spaces, again, I can start at any of these points. So it gives you 2 points, super simple. So let's see, going from, let's say, this point to this point, how many spaces am I moving? So I go, let's find out our change in x. Again, that's going to be our denominator. Always make sure it's a ratio. So I'm going from left to right. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can draw that line like so. I'm saying, okay, that's plus 4. So that's plus 4, and then I have to go up 2. Oh boy, plus 2. And that kind of makes sense since, okay, we know it's going to be a positive slope. It is as your x values increase, so does your y. And so we know that the slope is going to be positive. And so more specifically, if you have this ratio of 2/4, you can also reduce it to 1/2. Again, 2/4 is equal to 1/2 or 0.5, whatever works for you. All right, so now, again, I'm looking for which answer has a b value or y-intercept of 1. That's not right. Always go back, double check. A b value of 4. Let's actually draw that 4 this time. All right. Which one has a y-intercept of 4 and which one has a y-intercept of 1/2? Well, this is a negative. The slope is not 2, so we are left with D. Again, always double check your answers. Always make sure if you need to talk it out to yourself in your head, you might sound crazy, but I can assure you, you'll get the right answer. Moving forward, again, we're on that second half now. So it says, what is the slope and y-intercept of the equation y equals negative 8x minus 9? This is, again, a super easy one because all you're saying is, okay, can I identify our slope m, and can I identify our y-intercept, which is b? So let's say I'm going to circle slope. Let's back up. I'm going to circle slope, and I'm going to highlight our y-intercept. All right. Again, you will always have this equation y equals mx plus b. If you need to keep saying this in your head over and over and over and over and over and over again, please do. That way you can get it right. All right, so our slope in this one, let me rewrite the equation. So we have y equals, and then we have negative 8x, and then we have minus 9. All right. So in this problem, our slope, again, it just lines up perfectly. So if you're looking at your left hand and you're looking at your right hand, you know, what is similar, what is different? So you're looking at these two equations and you're saying, okay, this m, this slope, is going to be negative 8. And so we can say that our slope is negative 8. And then our b, make sure you include that sign, is going to be negative 9. So we have negative 9. Always be careful when you have those values. You must include that sign. If it is a If it is plus 9, it would be a positive 9. If it's minus 9, it has to be a negative 9. All right. So, do we have a slope of 0? Nope. Do we have a slope of 9? Or rather, nope. Do we have a slope of negative 8? Yes. Do we have a slope of positive 9? No. Do we have a slope of negative 8? Yes. Do we have a slope of negative 9? Yes. And so we know that this will be good. Always double checking our work. Slope of negative 9? Nope. And so we can pick C for that one. Again, notice how I'm able to explain and reason for each of these problems. And so if you're skipping through and just showing a 0 work, you're going to get 0 credit, and then you don't even know how to do this. At least show something, write a sentence, explain your thoughts. All right, for this one, it says, Liza hired a cleaning service to clean her house. To find C, the total cost of cleaning her house, she used the following formula. C equals 7.5x plus 25. What is the dependent variable in the formula? Right away, when it says, what is the dependent variable, I am astonished, embarrassed, and blown away by the number of people that picked B or D as a possible answer, as those are just, this is a constant, this is a constant, and this is a constant. I wish I was making this up, but unfortunately numerous people put one of those two as their answers. I have no words for it. But otherwise, it says, what is the dependent variable? Meaning it's going to be our output. And so we can say our output. What's coming out? It's the result. Okay, it's the output. Okay. So, out of any of these, we can have and know that right away those two are not answers, but let's see. Usually when we make that table, again, we have our x values, our y values, we have input, output. And the reason why I make this table is it's an easy way to remember those vocab words. And so if you're thinking, well, I know that my dependent variable is going to be x, which there's an x literally right there, so you don't even have to worry about it. You know that your y value, or whatever your normal y variable would be, is going to be your dependent. And so for this one, you would have to select C as your dependent variable. Moving on. All right. A student showed a graph of a line as shown. Graphed pretty well. And it says which equation represents the line. All right. So what you're going, so it's given, let's say, this is just like the X tickets we have. So it's, if you need to go back and watch that given a graph video, you have to be able to go to the equation, and which is exactly this question. And so given a graph, what is the equation? So we're looking to make an equation where y equals mx plus b, as always. And so let's see, what is going to be my slope and what is going to be my y-intercept. All right, so let's see. Again, let's find that y-intercept, since that one's the easier one to find. So I'm going to highlight that y-axis, and boom, right away, at what point does our graph of that line hit the y-axis, and you can say, hey, it's at this point right there, which we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So our value for our y-intercept is going to be 9. All right. And it's not just 9, it is a positive 9. So right away, I can eliminate 2 answers. So I can say that those two, since they are -9, I can eliminate them. So make sure that you're kind of breaking this apart one step at a time, making this easier for yourself. All right, so now we can say, okay, what is going to be our slope? So let's say if our slope, and there's a couple of different ways you can approach this. You can do your normal change in y over your change in x, or if you're using all of your resources, you can say, hey, I know that this graph, just looking at it, is going to be a negative slope. So I don't even need to calculate it, but it depends on how you work. Again, you want to be able to have several different tools in your shed. So if it's a negative slope, I'm thinking, okay, well, I have to go, if I'm going from this point, oh boy, let's try that again. Let's get rid of some of this stuff. If I'm going from, let's say, the point of 0, 9 to the point, again, we're always trying to pick the points that go directly in a corner like this. Again, we can draw perfectly. Again, we're going to go down 1, 2, 3. We're going down 3 and over 1. So again, our change in y is going to be -3, and our change in x is just going to be 1. So our slope for this is going to be -3. Let's actually draw that as a 3. Again, I apologize because this is a lot more difficult than it seems. I just make it look easy from time to time. But again, we're looking for a negative slope, and so of these two answers, which one has a negative slope? It is not C, so we get to select D. Again, being able to use those strategies like I just displayed, you want to eliminate 2 answers right away, because that way, instead of having 4 answers to pick from, you only need to pick between 2. All right, last 2. So now it has same kind of deal. You're going from the graph to the equation. All right. So, like the last one, I can say, hey, right away, what is the slope of this? Is it going to be positive, negative, or 0? And so right away, I know that this is going to be a positive slope. And this helps you out with the scatter plots as well. That way, you can just be able to identify those answers. So if I'm looking for positive slope, I can say, hey, I know that A has a negative slope, and I know that D has a negative slope, so it cannot be those. Let's also see, well, again, we're always in the form y equals mx plus b. And so, again, you can solve for either your slope or your y-intercept, whatever works for you. I personally like using that y-intercept because that one's a lot easier to identify. And so at what point does our red line hit the y-axis? Well, it hits at the point -2, so our slope, our y-intercept is going to be -2. And so of the 2 choices left, right away, I can eliminate B since it has a different y-intercept. Please make these problems easy for yourself like I am demonstrating. Again, we can also check to make sure that our answer is indeed C, because we can say, okay, I'm going, again, it's our change in y, over our change in x. And so if we say, okay, let us go 1, 2, 3 steps to the right, and then 2 steps up. Again, we had 2 steps up and 3 steps to the right, and so it actually does work out as our slope is 2/3 and our y-intercept is -2. Oh boy. As long as you are able to reason with yourself and use the graphs to your advantage, you will be good. Lastly, it says click on a box to choose the representation you want to select. You must select all correct representations. So again, this is just like our exit tickets, and we had it like this. We had, okay, on any of those exit tickets, we had the table, we had the points, we had the equation, and we had the graph. We practice that so much because of questions like this. Again, that's super simple if you're able to use any of those tools. So there's a couple different ways that we can see. Again, you got to pick between two of the equations, two of the points, or two of the graphs. And so you are already given, you're given the table. So you're given the table, and now you need to come up with some of the points, the graph, or the equation. So if I was to approach it like this, I'm going to say, okay, right away, I can say, let's find the equation. Since I kind of like that one, it makes it a little bit easier, and then we can check our other options. Excuse me. Whew. Find equation. All right, so let's find our slope. Again, we can use that ladder. You can use that ladder to be able to find our change in x and our change in y. And so again, you only need those 2 points. And so for our slope, again, we have the change in y and our change in x. All right, so let's see. If we're looking at this, we're saying, okay, we're going from -3 to +1. So this is going to be an increase. That's going to be an increase of 4. And from -2 to 0, that's going to be an increase of 2. So that means for our change in y, it's going to be 4, and our change in x is going to be 2. And so that means our slope is going to be 2. So out of these two equations, we know that, hey, okay, it cannot be that one because our slope must be 2. Okay, so we will select that one. Again, make sure it is highlighted orange like so. So you must click on it to make sure it is highlighted orange. All right. So I know there's a lot going on. Make sure that take your time, pause it if you need to reevaluate what you have. Now, again, I could do the points, I could do the graph. Any of these works at any time as they are all the same representation. So, if you're looking at the two graphs, well, which one has a now positive slope? So we have a positive slope. And so we can say that, okay, between these two, we know that this one does not have a positive slope, and so we are able to select the other as it does have that correct slope. All right, so let's see. So a lot of people got these two, and now they got stuck on this third one because they said, oh, Mr. Shank, I don't know what to do. These points aren't in there. There's just no way they ever have these points, and I don't know what to do. and I asked, did you try anything? And they were dead silent. So if you're given a graph, so let's maybe make some more space on this. Again, this is a good thing. If you run out of space because you're writing so much work, that's a good thing. You want to be able to show as much knowledge or as much opportunity as you can. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, okay, since I know my equation, I can plug in these values. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that trusty Desmos calculator to be able to show that. So let's say, okay, if our equation is, again, I use that keyboard, I'm going to say y equals 2x and then plus 1. And I press enter because I'm trying to define what that equation is. And so now, okay, I can test to see which of these points actually works. So if I start plugging these in, so let's say does x equal, what should our output value be when x equals -1? Okay, so -1 works. Okay, so we can put a check mark on that one. Sure. Now, what is our x value when, or excuse me, what's our y value when x equals 2? Okay, when x equals 2, our y value or our output is 5. Okay, so that one works. But we have to make sure we can't just stop and assume that everything works. We have to make sure that it works for any of these. And so, okay, if our x value is 4, it should be an output of 9. And if our x value is 7, our output is 15. So we know that one would work well. But now, would this bottom one work? So let's see. Okay. Again, all I'm doing is I'm just typing in one number at a time. That way I can see what the output is for that. And so right away for that bottom one, I typed in x equals -3, and I said that, hey, our output should be -5, but the ordered pair that they give is -3, -7. So we know that one is incorrect. And so when we go to use our quiz, again, we would say, okay, this one is incorrect, and we would be able to pick this one and make sure it is highlighted orange.